May Jesus and Mary be loved by all hearts. Last September, Father Ed Looney, the great Wisconsin champion of the apparition of Our Lady of Champion, invited me to his podcast so that he could promote our new book, The Discovery of the Secret of La Salette. I'll put a link to that video in the description box. Father Looney is a serious scholar, and he was elected as the secretary of the Mariological Society of America, which is connected to the University of Dayton, Ohio. PhDs have been meeting annually for 65 years to share their research on the Mother of God. They alternate locations, each year East Coast, West Coast, and the Midwest. In 2026, it's going to be in the Midwest at Conception Abbey, only an hour away from the now famous incorrupt body of Sister Wilhelmina, foundress of the Benedictines of Mary. But this year, May of 2025, the meeting place was at St. Mary's Seminary in Baltimore, Maryland, the heart of our nation near the Capitol. Father Looney urged me to attend because the theme this year was apparitions, just up my alley. For the last 2 years, I've had a repeated invitation from a woman near Baltimore. She has served in various positions for the Flame of Love movement in the state of Maryland, and someone had recommended to her one of my videos. Diane went on to listen to many videos in the Marian News channel, and she became excited about the Order of the Mother of God. She and her husband have promised hospitality anytime and every time that I'm on the East Coast, which so far hasn't happened. But it just so happens this year there is an Amtrak route from Milwaukee to a depot 10 minutes from their home. We set aside 2 days to attend the Mariological Society talks, and then Diane filled out a week's itinerary by reaching out to a network of prayer groups who would be interested in hearing about La Salette and the Order of the Mother of God. These talks were recorded, and I'm making this talk public right now. The people in the audience had gathered on a Saturday morning in a school classroom via text and email chains on rather short notice. We expected about 20 persons, but over 50 crowded into the classroom, representing almost as many parishes in southern Maryland. They want me to return immediately to open a convent, promising much larger venues for more talks. We just need vocations. And when you see the video, you will agree that I need convent life. I'm getting too little exercise sitting at a computer day after day. Mary's people are everywhere, and it's comforting to know that there are many who surround our nation's civic and church leaders with prayers. Enjoy the talk, and God bless you.
For those who weren't here last night, I'd like to introduce Sister Ann, AKA Sister Mary Farron, right?
Sister Mary what?
And also, for those who weren't here, I'd like to also introduce Diane, who is with the Flame of Love organization and has been so gracious to be the conduit for this event to bring Sister here. So thank you, Diane.
My pleasure.
And I'm gonna.
Yes, and I rely on you to start closing me down, say 5 minutes or stop. Or
Yeah, I'll do that.
Because I get all excited.
Last night was good.
I know, you were probably trying to say.
No, it was good.
You had to yell.
Nobody wants it to be over.
Good morning. And Our Lady has brought you here, and I know you all love her and serve her in different ways. And I just love meeting and hearing your stories, and it energizes me too. So last night, most of you were here, but a few of you might not know exactly who I am or how I got here. So the talk last night was The Queen Mother is Calling, and it was partly to tell you my call, or why I was a Carmelite for many years, so that was one vocation to Vocari, to be called. And then after I was a Carmelite for many years, like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, she was a teaching sister for many years. And then you hear, now I'm supposed to do something else. And that's the typical way new religious orders start, because you just can't usually start a religious order unless you kind of know the ropes and got some training somewhere. So our Lord made me hear some actual voice. So I heard 7 words: promote the rule of Mary, and then this is La Salette. And so at La Salette, many of us Catholics don't even know about La Salette, even though we're intensely Marian, because that was actually one of the biggest. That was so exciting. That was the first modern Mary apparition where Our Lady has a message for the world, where you could go and actually talk to the visionaries. Because a little earlier was 1830 was Catherine Labouré, but the bishop kept her anonymous the rest of her life, and nobody, even her own sisters, didn't know she had had the medal of the Immaculate Conception and some visions. So here there were two young children who had met just the day before, so they did not even have time to concoct a story, and they both had a reputation for honesty, and they were believed immediately. And the fact that Our Lady came crying because she said, you all are not keeping the first 3 commandments, and God is going to have to punish you because of that, and I'm so tired of praying, I can't keep going. And the fact that Our Lady was so upset she was crying over them, that just touched their hearts, and there were massive conversions all over Europe. They were coming up the Alps on crutches and whatever they could get there, from Belgium and all sorts of places, and it was a very, very big deal. And then but then during that, so often when Our Lady, she gives a public message and then a private message, so that after a while people have time to percolate that, then they might be open to the more difficult message. Like at Fatima, they weren't quite ready to hear the more deeper message, consecration, Immaculate Heart, and some of these other things. So it was with La Salette. It was a very, very painful message of Our Lady is saying, in very apocalyptic, very symbolic language, if you've read The Long Secret, the clergy is a cesspool, and convents are the dwellings of demons, and Catholic leaders are leading people to hell. And she just says in very symbolic language that this is going to escalate into the time of the Antichrist, and that God is going to we're going to go through something big. It's not really clear, was that going to happen right away, or was that something in the future? But that at the end of that, so that was a secret part that Our Lady said she'll let them know when they're supposed to make that public. And then at the end, she said, this part isn't secret, Melanie, but at your discretion. This is a rule for a religious order for the end times. So that's usually not published with the secret. So it was harder for me to find that, to verify that existed. So when I finally found it, because I didn't have direct access to the internet, then I brought it to my prioress and told her that this is a beautiful rule, and it's really all about Lumen Gentium, to help the lay people understand that they are called to the highest levels of mystical life with prayer life, but just like the religious and priests, which has often been debated, but now this order will help people, like ongoing workshops, to help you advance in your prayer life. Because everyone needs some help, but if you're religious, you have a novice mistress and some training. If you're a priest, you get you're in the seminary. But lay people often don't get that accompaniment, and deeper prayer can be a little disconcerting at times. You can get a little lost and tempted and confused and fall by the wayside and need some direction and read this book or something. So this order will help the laity especially, and we'll also have retreats for bishops and all sorts of categories of religious and in the whole church, to keep up that deeper prayer life, so that the whole church will be a holy family and we'll all live our unique vocations at the highest calling. So I was explaining that what's exciting is that this is the 7th rule, and for 2,000 years, gradually there's always been, every time there's a new rule, it gives rise to a flurry of movement of the Holy Spirit, great graces for the church to do something addressing some crisis or some need, and then eventually it spawns many congregations that kind of specialize in some charism of the rule. So we have many kinds of Franciscans, many kinds, from St. Ignatius, he started feeling called, he's supposed to take the rule, to take religious life into places that are not Christian, because they were discovering Japan and all sorts of places on the seas. And so almost all religious congregations from the 1600s are actually following St. Ignatius' rule. Mother Cabrini, Mother Teresa of Calcutta, St. Faustina. So, but now we have a rule from Mary. So I thought, a new rule. I know what that does in church history. This is so exciting. So now we have an impetus, and this is the Marian age. And so I was going through all of that. So I'm tempted to repeat all of last night's talk, so I just better cool it and keep going. So I was getting some ideas on what I would say tonight. There's so many different ways you can go. I was talking to Diane, and she says, the group you are talking tonight is not Catholic 101. These people know their stuff, and I don't have to start from scratch or talk about stuff. And she thinks the people here probably want to know where we are on the spectrum. When is the chastisement going to come? Do we need to start gathering water and food and a refuge? You know, is the persecution around the corner when we have to go through this 3.5 years and the days of darkness and Armageddon and all that? Where are we? Because we believe, but how soon do we focus on that? And do we just stay in our lane and do our stuff now and that's coming down the road? Or should we get serious about it and make preparations? And you go on the internet and you get 9,000 opinions on where we are. So it's very hard to navigate right now. So, okay, I'm done with that one. I just was, finally, I was having my laptop. I thought, I'm just gonna take a screenshot of this laptop. This is easier. Okay, so I titled this talk, what did I title it? I titled it, The Queen Has a Battle Plan, because we are moving into her warfare. We talked about that last night, that this is her battle with the demon. With Jesus, he battled in a different way to save our souls and at a different level as the new Adam. But with her, she is mother of the whole race. She's the new Eve, and Satan sees her as the icon of the bride of Christ. And so she is the epitome, and he hates her even more because, you know, I mean, it's okay to be defeated by God, but be defeated by a human being and a woman, I mean, that's just the ultimate for Satan. He can't stand it. So she really humiliates him, and he wants to get rid of her. So it's an ongoing battle. But we see in the book of the Apocalypse that eventually this woman will crush him. And we're getting closer to that time. And that was predicted in Genesis 3. Now, there was de Montfort came forward on the scene. His books were buried, and they were found about the time of the first modern Marian apparition for the world, and that was what we now call the miraculous medal, but which I'm hearing that we should go back to calling it the medal of the Immaculate Conception and explore that mystery, because that is a very important identity of Mary, and not just saying, give these away, you'll get a free miracle, but no, meditate on this, wear it as someone who's standing on a serpent. That's what that medal is about. And you are connected to her and to help her crush that serpent. And so what came of the person who meditated on that was a layman, Frank Duff in Ireland, and he just got really enthralled with de Montfort's works. And what came of that was a worldwide movement, lay movement, which was the Legion of Mary. And it's very militia, very, very organized. The meetings are very structured, but it was a wonderful way, and it did great things in communist China. That was an underground tool to keep the faith going for millions of Catholics. And we think, oh yeah, this is a small percentage of people are Catholic in China. But we were talking about 1.5 billion people. A small percentage is a lot of Catholics, you know. Yeah. There's a lot of faith there in Asia and the Philippines, and the Legion of Mary was really big there, but it was big in the United States too. It's not so strong now because I think it's moving on to other things, but it was a militia thing. He saw that as it was divided into little cohorts, a Roman terminology of these little battle things. We're all structured to fight in what we're supposed to do. And then in the 70s, a very humble priest, now I can't remember, servant of God or venerable, but his cause is now being seriously advanced, and Rome is taking him very seriously. It's and most people have for many years, is Father Stefano Gobi with the Marian movement of priests and all those messages that Mary gave to him, talking about that we are living the apocalypse, and she wants her people to be consecrated to her and to understand that these times. And so those messages were amazing. But she also talks about cohorts. She uses, I'm losing my picture here. Here we go. So my notes. So again, there's this thing of battle, and that we're moving into a time of warfare. And as Father said, it's good news that we're going to be persecuted, right? Okay, that was great. So yeah, I want this much more. But she does have a battle plan. She tells us to follow her with confidence, to pray to her, and to use our Marian consecration to give her permission to control our lives. So, and we're all her piece, her pawn on a chessboard or wherever. She puts us where she wants us, and we don't really know what she's doing all the time. And she introduces us to somebody we didn't plan on meeting, who has something to give us or talk to us or teach us, or we're supposed to work with them. And sometimes we're all caught up in that, and she moves us to another place, and she's opening doors and closing doors, and we think we're going this way, and that shuts, and now we're going this way. And if we belong to her, that's not coincidence. That's the mother. She has a plan for us. And so, but she also kept telling him, which is kind of mysterious, that don't try to figure it out, because what's really going on, it's a battle between the good angels and the bad angels, and it's a spirit world battle, and we're the prize. And for every soul that Satan manages to take to hell, that's a point for him. He always has that. Again, for all eternity, he can rejoice over that. Even if he doesn't win the whole war, he knows he won't win that. Every soul is something that he can always hold over God's head. See, I got this one. Mine. And so it's a very serious battle for the spirits. And we pray the prayer to St. Michael, but she says it's on a different dimension, and if we saw it, we'd be blown. We got to be where we're at, do our thing, and be the incarnate body of Christ. But it's a spirit world, but they're tempting us all over the place. And so Satan has his people in mortal sin over here, so he's kind of got them. So he'll get them involved in some business venture and get somebody on another side of the world involved in some business venture, and then all of a sudden they've got a monopoly and we're all stuck, because something else as bad is happening. So it's a very complex web, and we understand web now with the World Wide Web. So it's all, he's got all these connections, but it works the other way with good angels too, right? So we don't always know what they're doing or the connections. But so the main thing is we have to be very confident, not that we know everything or can understand it all, but confident that when we are saying our rosary and giving ourselves, renewing our consecration, reminding Our Lady that we belong to her, we trust her. And it kind of goes with Divine Mercy too. Jesus, I trust in you. Mary, I trust in you. And it keeps us calm, even if we don't get to see the whole thing. So we all have our specialties and where we're put at. You guys, a lot of you have family businesses and can tell me tons of things about what you do to support your family and all sorts of things. And as a religious, the Lord, not all religious are totally immersed in scripture as I have been because of different circumstances. So I have been blessed with not only growing up with all the Marian prophecies and always being interested in those and never imagining that I'd be talking about them outside the cloister. That's wild. But I just wanted to know what Mary was doing and to meditate on that. And but since I was also very much immersed in the Old Testament from third grade onward and taught it in novitiate, it gave me a perspective that many don't have. And now I realize I've been pulled out of the cloister to share the connections with you. I'm not a prophet. I don't think I have the gift of prophecy, but sometimes from your perspective, you can see a bigger picture that people are other just seeing the pieces. So one thing I saw very early, and I have a whole 12 or 13 talks on this in depth, is I was very drawn to Father Roby's messages. I mean, they're not his message, but coming to him year by year for 25 years, from 73 to 1997. And I would look forward to those and meditate on those. And they comforted me very much because a lot was going wrong in the church. And sometimes I felt I was the only one seeing that there's a problem here. The others saying, oh, yeah, that's a good bishop. And I'm thinking, I don't think so. But I wasn't able to prove it. But Mary was, setting the record straight and bringing things. And it was very comforting to me. But what annoyed me is she kept saying, read the book of the Apocalypse. Well, I love the whole Bible and I read all of it, but the book of the Apocalypse, that's just nuts. I mean, all these seven-headed creatures running around and it stops and it starts and it thinks there's half an hour of silence and it's over and it starts up again. I didn't understand any of it. She was saying, you've got to understand the book of the Apocalypse. And so I would read it and I would be careful. And in Carmel, we have a lot of time for meditation and slow prayer on it. And I would get to the end of it and I think, at the end of this, I know about as much as I did on page 1. I didn't get any of it. It just went over my head. But I would be reading, give this message, she would go over again, read the book of Revelation. So I would read it again. I don't know how many times I read it on my own. And then I started going and getting commentaries in the library. There were Protestant commentaries. There are all sorts of, anybody had Bible commentaries on the book of Revelation. And they were all over the place. I mean, they had different perspectives, and some saw it as a timeline, others this way, and others were comparing it to different aspects of the Old Testament. I think the Old Testament is cited something like 420 times in the book of Revelation, just 22 chapters. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of prophecy in the Old Testament that has not been fulfilled. And you can't even stretch it and say, well, Christ mystically fulfilled it. I mean, that's really stretching it. There's a lot that's still supposed to happen. And the book of the Apocalypse has many allusions to that. But where's the deal here? And so I kept reading the Bible year after year, and the book of Revelation, and reading all these commentaries. And I still wasn't seeing much. But I said, well, I did my best. But then one day, I don't know when it was, I can't tell you exact, but I was just comparing all these commentaries from different disciplines. I'm thinking, what's the common thread here? Are all these commentaries, is there no common thread? And it seemed to me that what was very common is that they either divided the book into it was 5 sets or 4 sets. Either there are 5 sets of 7s, and you include the 7 letters to the churches at the beginning, or you consider the 7 letters some kind of prologue, and then there's just 4 sets. The 4 seals, the 4 trumpets, the 4, I can't even think of it right now, the 4 plagues, and 4 something else. And so I was thinking, 4 sevens and 5 sevens, wait a minute, what's the Jubilee? It's the 7 sevens. And what's going on in the Apocalypse? It's trumpets. That's what you sound for the Jubilee. And the whole word for trumpet in Hebrew is jubal. And so I began to see the whole thing as heading toward the great Jubilee year. And the 7 sevens were not 7 repeats, but 7 groups explaining the same story over and over. So that just unlocked the whole thing for me. And then I saw that Mary had revealed very carefully one set of 7s, the 4th set of 7s. And once you decode these, and she identified the red dragon as communism and the black beast as this and that, and then once you have identified and decoded one set of 7s, that kind of lets you decode the rest of the Apocalypse pretty much. And so that was one thing that I had been given, I believe, that has helped to understand where we are in history. And so I'm not going to get into that now because we would be here many, many hours, and it's all on YouTube, so you can take it from there. But right now, I had another illumination like that, and that's kind of coming from my long biblical thing. And I don't even know where it all came. It just came suddenly. I thought, why didn't I see this before? It's just a flash. Okay, so one reason everybody was ready for Jesus to appear, the Jews, and they were thinking, John the Baptist, are you him? And they had identified a couple more who said they were, because at that time, the Jews were counting from the 70 weeks prophecy in the book of Daniel. So 490 years, you end up right there when Jesus is about 30 years old. So they were looking, it's going to happen. The Messiah is going to be here. Daniel said so. We've been counting all these years, and this has got to be it. So they were prepared. And I thought, and it just hit me that 70-week prophecy, the Antichrist will be the perfect antithesis of Christ. And so the one reason we recognize Christ, Fulton Sheen has a marvelous homily on that. He's the only one that was predicted way ahead of time. You've got all these other Buddha and all these other Muhammad and these. They were not predicted ahead of time, their birth, but this one is from the very, very beginning of creation. They talked about the coming. And so we were expecting him as the expected one. But from the beginning of Christianity, and even before actually, we were expecting this Antichrist, this guy. And I'm thinking, then the 70 weeks prophecy that applied to Christ is going to apply to the Antichrist. And so if there were 490 years, 70 years, what happened 490 years ago, thereabouts? In the book of Daniel, it begins with the opening of, there is a little complicated. There's Artaxerxes, there's Xerxes and Darius and Cyrus, but one of them says, it's time to rebuild the temple. And from that time, that was when the Jews could go back and start everything. And is that right? What am I saying? No, that was actually that was the 69th week that happened. So excuse me. So that was in there, and that was one reason we can date it, because one of the events in those 70 weeks is the rebuilding of the temple, and that was prophesied in there. And if you count back, and I was counting about what happened about 490, 500 years ago. Well, Guadalupe, what did she tell him? Build me a temple, teocolo. She didn't say church, she didn't say shrine, she didn't say a place to remember me. And I was always scandalized at that. I said, is that the right translation? Whenever I read that can't be the right translation. She's not a goddess. And she said, build a temple. Actually, it would build a temple for me, I guess if you translate it better. And it's like, not to worship me, but so I can be a place of comfort and compassion and exercise my love for you. So build a place to come where I can be the center for you, and build a temple for me. And so what else happened? Okay, so how did the Jews end up in Babylon, and why were they there for 70 weeks? So it said that for so many years they had not been keeping the Sabbath. So God wanted them to do penance, a year in exile for every Sabbath day they did not keep the Sabbath. So that was 70 years. For 490 years they hadn't been keeping the Sabbath very well. That's a pretty sad epitaph. But Daniel was in Babylon, and he kept thinking the 70 weeks is coming to an end. But he wasn't seeing a really deep repentance. And in reality, very few Jews left Babylon. They had settled there. Very few went back to the decrepit Israel, which was a hole in the wall, to live there and to rebuild and deal with it. Very few actually had the courage and the faith to go back to their homeland. And Daniel was weeping because he could still see the sins, and he felt that there was more to it than 70 weeks of years. 70 weeks. He was seeing sevens of years, and he was praying for light, and then this angel gave him the 70 weeks prophecy. And I didn't bring my Bible. I mean, I'm going to refer you in detail to my longest and most famously boring video. in which it goes on for 90 minutes, in which I go verse through the 70 weeks prophecy to show you how it was fulfilled in Jesus' time and how we can see that it's going to line up to the Antichrist time. But so the other end, so what happened, so sin got them there. And so the sin got them to Babylon, and then from Babylon, someone was going to say, go back, build the temple, and we'll start over rebuilding everything. So what was the corollary here? What happened 500 years ago to get us to the mess? It was the Protestant Revolution, which they rejected. It was Catholics apostatizing. They were all Catholics falling away and saying, we don't need the church, or we don't need the Pope, or we don't need this telling us what to do. So there was a great apostasy. And then Our Lady appeared, and they say they lost about 8 or 9 million Catholics in Europe and gained about that many from the Tilma in Guadalupe. So there was a reparation movement going on. But when you go back, going forward, so you go through all these weeks, and then you come to the 70th week. And that's where I was really focused, because it says, I wish I had on my Bible, said so in the 70th week, the first half of the week, a great, it's clear that it's the Messiah will come, and then he will be cut down at the midweek. He will be cut down at the midweek, which is, Jesus' ministry was 3.5 years, right? So that was the middle of the week. He was cut down. And then there's a strange Hebrew expression for an indefinite amount of time. And then the great God will bring to an end in fire and brimstone the temple, which the rebellion of the Jews took about 3.5 years of the siege of Jerusalem, when the Romans were around that temple and the hill, and they couldn't get up there, and they were so mad because the Jews were so rebellious, and the Jews had inside the walls who they decided was the Messiah, and he was going to make them victorious over the Romans. That was their Messiah, the rebellious Jews. So you've got this half a week in Jesus' time. We know there was half a week when he had 3.5 years of ministry, and then at the end of it, we know there was 3.5 years, and that was really the end of worship, because the synagogues were not the place of worship. There was only one place of sacrifice, and also it brought an end to the priesthood, because everything burned up the records. So no one, even if they rebuilt the temple, they couldn't start up the sacrifices again, because the Jews couldn't determine who couldn't prove who was a son of Aaron and had the right to approach and not be struck by lightning to offer the sacrifice. So that really did end the worship of the old covenant at that point. And then going forward, that the new covenant took over the daily sacrifice. So I saw very clearly that the 3.5 years, when there would be a great persecution, we all know that Antichrist is supposed to be around 3.5 years of very great power in the world and really do a lot of damage to the Christians and be the great hero, and everybody thinks he's wonderful. A lot of people will be deceived by him and imagine that he is a great prophet or divine or whatever people think. And then he will be cut down. And then there will be a mysterious, something corresponding. There's a time of grace, because God always gives people time to look back, and a lot of Jews realize we missed him. What can we do, apostles? And a lot of them, they called on the blood, they repented, and they were baptized. And then the early Christians had time to start making forays into the different synagogues and start spreading the news. And as we read the Acts of the Apostles, there were moments of eruption. They would be persecuted and thrown out of town, and there were back and forth in those about 30, 40 years, until there were just some Jews who were just determined that Jesus wasn't it. We want somebody who's going to be a political Messiah. And then they got control of the temple, and we're going to drive out the Romans, and we're going to claim our Holy Land. And so that, it was like the time when God allowed people to solidify their opinion, black or white. And he gave that time of mercy, and then it was the end. So it's an indeterminate kind of period. And so I started counting, trying to calculate all these weeks. And so it seemed to me that, I don't know how far back I was in Carmel, that it would be around maybe the year 2014 when maybe the Antichrist would start his 3.5 years. But everything's messed up by prayer, because prayer changes everything. So people can, and it says in the Bible, God will shorten the time for the sake of the elect. So, but I was very much, I've always studied the apparitions of Amsterdam and all of that, and even though it's just recently the Vatican squashed it once again, it comes up, it's approved, it's disapproved, approved, disapproved. Right now it's on the down low, that the Amsterdam messages are very, very, very trustworthy. I think they're 100% and very important. And it's in that she asked for the fifth dogma. And it's that, I believe from all that I said last night and stuff, that Eve and Adam, if they had been obedient to God, they would not have just listened to the serpent. They would have had the authority. God would have kind of crowned them, ordained them as king and queen of the human race, and maybe high priest and priestess of the whole human race, depending on how grace would have worked. They would have had the authority to cast the demons out of the earth, that they would never have bothered us. But instead they listened and were tempted. But at some point, if Mary is given her proper place, and it's been taking one dogma after another, Amsterdam says she needs one more dogma, a triple dogma, which is the authority of Christ's vicar to say that she is the advocate, the co-redemptrix. That finally crowns her and makes her officially the new Eve, the queen of the universe. And then she and her son will be able to expel all the demons on the earth and destroy all the evil. So what is that about? That's very much the description of the 3 days of darkness, which very much corresponds to the Exodus, when you have all these plagues, one after the other, and finally there is darkness, and God sends the evil to kill off the firstborn of every family that was opposing Christ, and even the animals. And so there was a purging, a cleansing, and he definitively crushed the enemy at that point. And so the 3 days of darkness, we've had this from Anne-Marie Taji and different saints talk about this time. And we know that it will be a period when we're supposed to stay indoors and let the angels, whatever happens, go through the earth and definitively send to hell those who are just incorrigibly not going to convert and continue to make earth a hell because of the way they abuse people and abuse systems. They're not going to convert, so God's going to get rid of them and wipe them out, and he's going to get rid of all the demons. And then going forward for the next 1,000 years, this earth will be tempted by different things, each other and things, but we're not going to be tempted by spirits. They're not going to be weaving webs and connecting us and whispering in our ear. We'll only have our guardian angels. And going forward, it will be a beautiful, beautiful time. And so some of us, I don't know, we're going to live to see it, but she tells Ida Peerdeman, she keeps saying, I'll get my dogma in 52. Well, Pius XII would have liked that very much. He was a Marian Pope, but he barely got the dogma of the Assumption off the ground in 50 because he had so much flack from the German hierarchy. They said, this is going to mess up all our Lutheran dialogue. We don't want to make Mary anything. And so, but he was getting a lot of petitions from the laity, and the rest of the bishops in the world wanted Mary's Assumption to be definitively defined. It had been believed piously for centuries, but it had never been defined. And they just felt that year was the time to do it, and he did it. And then Ida Peerdeman has these things that now Mary's asking for a fifth dogma. And Pius was a very, very holy man, and he really believed, but he just couldn't pull it off by 52 or 53, 19. It wasn't possible. So what he did, he made a feast of, what did he do? I think he made the Feast of the Coronation. I think that's kind of a modern feast, and put that in August or something. The calendar's been changed around since Vatican II, but he did make a Marian feast, but that was not a dogma. And so what do we have for 52? And she only said 52. And so that's 2052. And what is that? That's if we allow for the Antichrist to come and have his 3.5 years, and then we have a period where people can look back and see, I was deceived by that, and I regret killing Christians during that time, and there's something here, and God gives that time of mercy and to process all that. Then around 52, we will get a holy pope who will do the dogma, and then Mary and Jesus will be able to exercise their power and will purge the earth. And then only after that 3.5 days of darkness will we have the great 1,000-year reign where and this will be a missionary order also, because people all over the world were saying Christ is the true religion, and please come and tell us about, make us Catholics. All the Hindus and Muslims and all sorts of people will be converting, and they will want to be guided also into a life of deeper prayer. And so this order has 33 points. Only one point in it says that we are supposed to be the order that helps people keep the faith during the time of the Antichrist. And the rest of it, we have other things to do. We promote devotion to souls in purgatory. Because only Catholics pray for the souls in purgatory, and how many Catholics even remember to do that? So there's a lot of neglect to the souls in purgatory. So that will be one of our things. And also going forward, okay, so we are collecting all we can of Mary's words that for the world. I mean, she's appeared. There's thousands of apparitions of Mary, but we're just collecting the ones where she had a message for the whole world, and that's going to stop. Mary said, my times are now to prepare you for this, and then I'm done with messages for the world. And so that's about 1830, probably till about 2030, and that will be over. But and then we'll just say, oh, well, that was history. No, the church doesn't do that. We're still meditating on all the prophets of the Old Testament. We still read those, and they're still beautiful, because when there's something divine, even for the next 1,000 years, people will be meditating on Mary's beautiful messages and taking something away from them, even though we know it's done, it's past tense, and the Antichrist is done, and she prepared us for that still. And then we can say the Old Testament, we don't need the Old Testament anymore because the New Testament came to pass. That's not the way the church says that. No, it says an ongoing, infinite gift. The Word is infinite. Mary's Word will never be dogma, it will never be bound with the Bible, will never be part of the liturgy, but it will always be beautiful and enriching to us, to take what we can. None of us can meditate on everything. And that's another thing I want to just mention here. I do this to devout groups because we're all interested in everything. I mean, but who has time to do the Chaplet of the Holy Face, the Chaplet of Flame of Love, the Chaplet of this? There's all these apparitions, and do I need to just pick one and stay with that the rest of my life? Or what am I supposed to, how do I navigate all these apparitions? Do I really ignore all the other things and just focus on what appeals to my emotions or the people around me? That's an answer you have to go through. And I can just tell you personally that when I was a young religious, I would be in my reading, I would come across something, it would really move me. And I would just be immersed in that and want to read everything about that saint or that apparition. And that might last a year or two. And then by some accident, I came across this other thing I just learned. And that would be a new grace complementing what I had gotten there. And I would be, to my embarrassment, I would see, I have to set that aside. I need time for this. In the Carmelite life, you don't have that much time of your own. There's the bell rings and you got to keep going. But I gradually understood that sometimes there's, Proverbs or Sirach, I forget which wisdom book, there's a time for this and a time for that. A time for this.
Season.
Yes, a season. And sometimes we just have to pay attention to what the Spirit says. I know you love that, but and St. Paul says something about, when I was a child, I did childish things. When I was younger in maturity, I needed that particular apparition, but now I need this one. And so just mostly, you should probably stay in your lane if you're promoting this thing and you feel this apparition really well and all the writings, and it's really, that's where you're called to be. Don't be embarrassed that you aren't spending time to learn about La Salette and this and this. Maybe that's where you're supposed to be, and that will be your sanctification, and you will sanctify others with that. But if you have been in one thing, and that's kind of, that group is kind of going its own way, and you're finding something else, don't be afraid to say, okay, maybe the Spirit has me in this for a while. But that's something I cannot answer for any of you, and probably no priest could answer that question in confession. It's very much you and God have to work that out. and don't be afraid to listen to the Spirit. And but don't think that you need to learn all the apprehensions of the Blessed Mother, because I'm spending 10 years trying to get La Salette translated and all the commentaries and all the writings of Melanie, and I can tell you we've done at least 5,000 pages, and now we found a couple more biographies of Maximin, and it's going up to 8,000 pages, and I imagine you have other things to do than read everything on everything. I spent a lot of my early life reading everything written of Saint Therese, the Little Flower. There's a lot of literature on her. So where we are now, I would have thought, if I had known that I would be, this isn't a real habit, so this thing kind of, someday I'll get a real veil and they'll stay on. But if I had known that I would be wandering from bishop to bishop, diocese to diocese, meeting so many wonderful people, but not living in community for 10 years before I finally got back into religious life, because I love religious life and it's a structure I'm used to, that I would be out in the world wandering around like a gypsy, I probably wouldn't have had the courage to step out. But it's always been good. I just meet wonderful people, and it's always been a grace, and I've never regretted it taking so long, and there's so much French to get translated, and so it's been necessary. But at the same time, I would have thought, we'll just get that order off the ground, let's do it. My family was into small businesses, so my dad, we put up like 9 different restaurants when I was a teenager, so yeah, I know how to do that, property this, property that, we can do that. And it hasn't happened, and I'm still wandering around. And this order, don't we need it now? Look at the world, don't we need this order now? And even once we start it, we need time to train the novices, the brothers and the sisters, and this isn't going to happen as fast as I'm thinking, and aren't we at? And so I'm just thinking, God is shortening the time, because I figure we just got till about 2052 when it's all wrapped up, and that there's going to be the Antichrist before then, and then some period of time for everybody to reflect on that, and then the finale around 52 or 53, Mary says. So the time is getting shorter for it to start. We think the way it says in the Bible that God will shorten the time after it starts, the persecution won't be too long, but I'm thinking it's shortening to get it started. So that's my theme. And so, but it can't be crazy now because we're not ready. We might have I think this is going to be the bishop, and that I was telling you last night, a priest came forward, a very holy priest. I couldn't have imagined picking out such a priest, but he's so holy and mature, and he knows a lot about the spiritual life, and he'll be a wonderful father figure. And he told me he feels called to start the male branch with me. And we're looking at property, an old La Salette shrine, the bottom of Wisconsin, and it's probably going to go up for sale later this year. So it's all converging, and I'm starting to get just a few little nibbles of people who might be interested in religious life and not just becoming a lay theotokon, which is wonderful. But amazingly, I haven't had that many people who wanted to come live with me. I don't know why. But Mary knew I wasn't ready to train them. I didn't have a place for them to come, because I myself am living in other people's basements and wherever I get a place. So I didn't have a place to gather people, but it's all kind of coming together, and I'm starting to translate. A deacon was enamored with the book, so he took it away. So the most important foundational book on La Salette, now we have all the documents to prove that Melanie wasn't lying, despite all the stuff you see on the internet. So we got one important book published last summer, and now I have a whole series. I'm working with a publisher down in Louisiana, and we'll probably be spitting out 24 books in the next year, because they're all ready to go. Now we're getting the templates. So it's all going to bang, bang, bang. And then I've got the website. We're redoing the website, but I'm starting to upload loads of stuff to the web pages now. It took forever. It took me forever to learn HTML code. Oh my goodness. But I think the website's going to be revamped by the end of the summer, and we're going to be publishing a lot of books, and it'll be ready. And then I can say, that's done. That can almost handle itself. And now I can give myself to forming the young people. So, and maybe there'll be older vocations, because Melanie said that she didn't want age limits on this. Frankly, I'd welcome mature women who already have an established prayer life, who are not coming with a lot of emotions and immaturity and giggles. And I can get started early with some mature women, and maybe some religious whose own congregation went woke and they're looking for another religious. I don't know what's going to happen, but Mary picks them out in the Holy Spirit. So I think it's all coming to start. So I need a bubble of time when a lot of craziness isn't going on. And who gets elected? And who's starting to clean up our government and make America great again, and bring back some sanity and peace and quiet. So I think we're in a bubble right now. I think we're going to have a few years to get this order established and to get it known around the world, because Melanie said it will be worldwide. And I think we're going to have vocations. Maybe we'll do virtual classes, and we'll start a class in Africa, a class here, because English is the new Latin. Almost anywhere in the world, if you're going to learn a second language, it's usually going to be English. So even if they can't understand your accent, they can read the captions on your video. So half of the subscribers on our YouTube channel are in Japan and Africa and all kinds of places. And so they're out there. A lot of Catholics who feel like we do, but we don't know who they are because they're not in our country. So it's going to be a worldwide order. It's going to go quick, and it's going to be ready to help people be calm when this mess starts. And I don't really have a lot of answers for refuges. I have a video on refuges because I feel like some of it are false prophets who are all about fear porn and be scared and find a place and the angels will feed you while you wait it out and then you'll come out in the wonderful world. A lot of that is kind of silliness. And Mary never talks about anything but the refuge of her heart. That's the first place you have to take shelter. And anything else, gathering people quietly, we know that when the Antichrist comes, we will have to have quiet masses or hidden priests and hiding holes for priests. Who knows what we're going to go through. And it's going to be every war. I was telling a friend that every war they have a new kind of weapon. So you can't use the last tactic from the previous war because now they have something new. So it's always a challenge. And Mary has told Father Gobi several occasions, and it just kind of made me stop. She says, when the Antichrist comes, you cannot imagine what the persecutions will be like. And she said the church will never have gone through those before. And I'm thinking, if you read the lives of saints like nuns do, I mean, we celebrate all the saints, and I mean the horrendous martyr deaths over the centuries, the things men invent. I don't think men invent all of these horrible tortures. I think they had a lot of help from Satan. Yeah. And to think we can't imagine how much worse it can be. No, I couldn't imagine, except one thing. They say the American Civil War was the worst war, and that all civil wars are the worst war because it's brother fighting brother. It's in the family, and it splits families, and people don't know which side to take, and it's horrendous to think you're shooting your brother or your uncle or your nephew or somebody. It's a very horrible thing. And what was it when Jesus was crucified? It wasn't the Romans. It was his own priest, the pontiff. Caiaphas was his pope. That was his role, the pontifex. So it was the church after the church. In the Jewish church, it was Jews killing Jews. And that was true. Paul was a Jew. He was killing Christians. So it was Jews fighting Jews. And they were all, can be interrelated. And here, Mary says, she talks about, that's why Salette starts out, priests are like cesspools and religious are letting demons into their convents. There's corruption, deep corruption in the church. And she's not talking just about priests and religious, but all lay people. How many times you look out at when I look I think the priest is on the altar, he's looking out at the congregation, they're all smiling and singing. How many of them are on contraceptives? How many of them just help someone have an abortion? How many of them have compromised with their faith on something serious because they may not even know it's mortal sin, but they're in sin, and that's preventing them from the grace. And when Satan gets strong, these people are not protected with grace because they're disconnected, and they're going to be deceived by the Antichrist, whoever he is. I don't know if he'll be a prelate or if he'll be maybe he'll be an alien from outer space who's really pretends to be coming from outer space. Who knows what it's going to look like? but a lot of our own brothers and sisters, our own Catholics will be deceived, and it will be Catholics killing Catholics. And Mary said that Kibeho was a sign for that, and Medjugorje was a sign for that. In Medjugorje, it was the Orthodox Christians killing Catholic Christians, and bitterness went both sides. It was a horrible, horrible war. If you ever read about what went on in the 90s, I guess, in Bosnia and all those places, it was really, I mean, they were digging up cemeteries just so they could have the pleasure of mutilating the corpses. I mean, there was that much hate. It was just so satanic. And then we got Kibeho, Rwanda. That was a French missionary territory. A huge percentage of Rwanda is Catholic, but it was tribal. Two tribes were against each other, and it all erupted. And Mary appeared at Kibeho 10 years in advance and says, you have to forgive each other deeply. And they said, everything's fine here, everything's fine. She says, no, you're still harboring stuff. No, everything's fine. They were singing, and everything's fine. She goes, no, not everything's fine. And then the girls started seeing rivers of bodies and headless bodies and blood, and they didn't get it. And she also said at Medjugorje, the biggest sin I see here at Medjugorje is unforgiveness. You're harboring something. You're holding a grudge against somebody. And the violence at that and the violence in Kibeho will erupt in a worldwide scenario where all that unforgiveness and hate erupts, and Satan will augment that dramatically. So we're going to face something very ugly at that time. But I think right now we're in a peacetime bubble. So strengthen your spiritual life. Share stories of Mary. Get as many people as you can to get on the right side of the Lord and prepare. And you can talk about, that this is coming, and where will you be? When will you be to see when the Antichrist comes? Who was it? I used to read the biographies of Maria Valtorta. I believe she was genuine. I loved the life of Christ as she saw it. She was a stigmatist, and there's some controversy, but it's pretty much approved. And she used to have some visions about the Antichrist. She said, Lord, I might be deceived. And he said, oh, come on. You know me. Anybody who knows me as a prayer life, they'll know right away this is a charlatan. So don't think that you're not going to pick up on who the bad guy is. You'll know because he doesn't have all the signs that you're used to in your prayer life. So so that's pretty much what I just wanted to tell you at this time, that we're not here right now. And also many people, unless you're really steeped and really know the messages of Father Gobi, it's a big volume, it's really a lot of messages, but she talks about the whole Revelation, and she talks, we're living in the book, the last book, but then she says very specifically, the book, chapter 20, the second half, I think, where it talks about the final battle of Armageddon, she said, that is not now, that's for the very end of the world after the 1,000 years. So when people talk about Armageddon and stuff, just say, no, this is not it. That's not what we're going to go through. Yes. Okay, so that's good. This is pretty much what I felt called that you needed to hear. And so I think that's, so be calm right now. Be confident that she loves you. And like I said, you don't have to dabble in every last apparition, but just try to listen to the Spirit where you're supposed to be at this time. And be excited, because this order is going to be a great impetus of grace for the church once it gets off the ground. And it will move quickly, because we're a World Wide Web now, so everybody hears everything instantly, whatever happens anywhere. I saw a clip, one of those YouTube shorts somewhere. There's little boys in, I don't know, Nigeria somewhere. They were fighting somewhere, and one of them got up and he did the Trump thing, fight, fight, fight. I thought, how do kids in Africa know about that? It just happened, And so yeah, it's everywhere. We're just one family. So,
does anybody have any questions?
I do.